Hello and welcome to the Mormon Yeshiva. This series is entitled The Mysterious Numbers of the Book of Mormon. Numbers mean things. Please make note of our fair use disclaimer. Everything here is meant for the purpose of education, and I hope that you'll take it in the spirit in which it was meant. From the very beginning, some of the discussions we've had in regard to the Book of Mormon is that it is a sealed or encrypted book. Now, a sealed book in Hebrew thought, or Hebraic thought, is basically a book whose full meaning is kept from you until the time is right for it to be revealed. So in many ways, well, the understanding is kept from you, it's also the idea that the book is encrypted. So if we read in 2 Nephi 27, verses 10 and 11, it says, "But the words which are sealed, he shall not deliver." In other words, the words which are encrypted, he, most likely Joseph Smith, shall not he shall not deliver, neither shall he deliver the book. For the book shall be sealed or encrypted by the power of God, and the revelation which was sealed shall be kept in the book until the own due time of the Lord, that they may come forth. For behold, they reveal all things from the foundation of the world unto the end thereof. Now that's the interesting thing right there. The foundation of the world, or the creation of the world, unto the end thereof. A complete eternal round, from creation to destruction, beginning to end, back to beginning. And it says, "And the day comes that the words of the book which were sealed shall be read upon the housetops, and they shall be read by the power of Christ. And all things shall be revealed unto the children of men, which have been among the children of men, which have ever been among the children of men, and which ever will be, even unto the end of the earth." So the important thing to understand about the Book of Mormon is that while there was a portion of the text that was not actually translated, the book itself in Hebraic thought is a sealed book, which means it contains encrypted information, hidden in plain sight, something that you may be looking at and yet is also meant to convey a different meaning or an additional meaning. So, for example, instead of seeing just the Book of Mormon as a linear historical text, which it is that as well, what we call the Peshat level of understanding, it is also a multidimensional text, meant to give us further light knowledge depending upon how we approach the text. So to understand some of these encrypted meanings, we need to understand that the mind of an Israelite involves cycles and patterns. So cycles and patterns are very key to understanding both the Bible as well as the Book of Mormon. Some of these cycles and patterns are contained in the Hebrew alphabet. In this case, the alphanumeric relationships of the Hebrew alphabet itself. In the Hebrew language, the alphabet, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, all the way down to Tav, they correlate to numeric values. Therefore, certain numbers and number sequences combine, and some of these combinations combine to communicate additional information. So that, in many ways, numbers may contain additional information that we are meant to unlock as we examine the text. One such cycle that is an overarching cycle of the entire Book of Mormon it begins at the beginning where it says, that Lehi left Jerusalem 600 years before Christ. Now, there are many alphanumeric cycles in the Book of Mormon. Some of them are very unique. There are many hidden numeric sequences in the Book of Mormon that are constructed in such a way that only a person who would know Hebrew and the alphanumeric sequences would be able to fully unlock it or even begin to appreciate it. So in this case, we're going to talk about this one regarding the idea of 600 years before Christ. And why does Nephi specifically mention it? Well, of course, the literal purpose is that his father left 600 years prior to the time of Christ coming to the Nephites. But there's also something more. So for example, it says here in 1 Nephi 10:4, yes, even 600 years from the time that my father left Jerusalem, a prophet would the Lord raise up among the Jews, even a Messiah, or in other words, a Savior of the world. So 600 years is a very important number. It's the first large number cycle in relation to chronology and time, in other words, 600 years, that is first mentioned in the Book of Mormon like a marker of time. Now, this appears at the beginning part of the Book of Mormon in 1 Nephi. But now let's go to the very end. And notice that here Moroni says 420 years have passed away. It says, now I, Moroni, write somewhat as seemeth me good, and I write unto my brethren the Lamanites, and I would that you should know that more than 420 years have passed away since the sign was given of the coming of Christ. I seal up these records after I have spoken a few words by way of exhortation unto you. Moroni 10, 1-2. If you'll notice, these are two major alphanumeric markers, if you will. These are markers in time. Numbers, and it has always been my belief that as well as just like in the Torah, nothing is placed in the Torah by accident. The same thing with the Book of Mormon. Every word was chosen for a reason. They had very limited space. So are they just recording the fact that it is, exactly, 600 years before Christ when they left, and 420 years when they to the time of their final demise? Well, that's part of it. But as a multidimensional text or a sealed text, we want to examine something a little closer. So here we have an entire cycle of time. So for example, the cycle of the Vav. The Hebrew science of numbers, gematria, is a particular discipline that yields specific, alphanumeric cycles, how numbers contain certain meanings and are related to certain words. Now, again, there are people who go way overboard with this, but if you follow the original or the oldest, very basic and common principles of gematria, it does keep it simple and it yields some very interesting things. So, for example, 600 in Hebrew, we begin to distill it down to the number 6. Now you say, how do we do that? Well, 6 plus 0 plus 0 equals 6. Now, that's still strange of how we think about numbers in our modern thinking. But the idea is that the number 600 can be distilled down to the number 6, which is equivalent to the letter Vav in Hebrew. At the end of the book, 420 in Hebrew distills also down to the number 6. 4 plus 2 is 6, plus 0 is equal to 6, which is also the letter Vav. So in a sense, the Book of Mormon commences on a Vav and ends on a Vav, denoting an entire cycle. Now, this is not the only cycle. This is just one of the big overarching ones in the text. There are others, and they are intricate by design, yet staring us right in the face as we read over the text. So when I say numbers mean things, I'm not joking. And we'll hopefully over the next part, as this series goes on, begin to look at some of those other alphanumeric sequences in the Book of Mormon. One you'll find in 3 Nephi, which is highly intricate, yet right in plain sight and very Hebraic. And then there's another one in the Book of Alma. And we'll go through that as part of this series. But for now, let's just begin by looking at the overarching cycle. The Book of Mormon itself, interestingly enough, commences in the number 6 and ends in the number 6. Vav and Vav. Now, why the letter Vav? Okay. So when we think of the letter Vav, we probably think to ourselves, okay, why is this important? Why the letter Vav? Well, the letter Vav is highly symbolic. First, we should make known that it is one of the 4 principal letters of the name of God, Yod He Vav He. Vav being a connecting between prophetic past, present, and future. So the design of the letter Vav is the picture of a peg or something which secures something to something else. It's also the picture of a hook. The meaning and usage of the letter Vav symbolizes a connection between past, present, and future. So in a sense, If the Book of Mormon begins on a letter Vav and ends on a letter Vav, it's telling us that this particular record is making a connection between the prophetic past, the prophetic present of the Nephites, and the prophetic future, which involves our world. So in the text, while most of the text is written in the prophetic present, the ordeal and the record of the Nephites and the Lamanites and the Jaredites and all those things, it also means that the book contains symbolically information regarding the prophetic past, that which was even more ancient than the house of Israel, the prophetic present, those things of Israel, and specifically the Nephites, and the future, that which is we call the world to come. In other words, ideally our world, hopefully, and the world to come, which we would think of as the millennium. It is also a symbol of something that connects something from a higher level to a lower level. So in other words, the Book of Mormon is something that, as a record, is meant to connect us to something that is higher in the upper worlds, and to connect this world with that world, and our hearts with that, with the hearts above. It also should denote and tell us about creation. The world was created in 6 days. The 6 days of creation. Just like the beginning section talked about the sealed book, that it contained a revelation from the beginning of the world to the end thereof. In many ways, many of the stories, while we read the literal story as a chronological record, the symbols in the stories also conceal hidden creation epics or teachings of the fathers that are more ancient than the Nephites or Israel itself. In addition, the first word in the Torah is Bereshit, or beginnings, or in the beginning, and is composed of 6 Hebrew letters. So a book of formation, a book of creation. The first Vav in the Torah is found at the beginning of the 6th word, Vet. Okay, so the letter Vav is connected to the Hebrew word Yesod, or foundation, the laying of a foundation and bonding. So in other words, the Book of Mormon is also lays a foundation that allows us to connect to the heavens above, and connect the heavens above to the earth beneath. In some traditions, the letter Vav is considered a channel through which light from the upper worlds nourishes this world. It's similar to like an umbilical cord, and why it is also related to, if you were to take the name of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh and put it from top to bottom, you would see the picture of a man, and the Vav would be our torso. Okay, the concept of God and man uniting as one. So the Vav contains the idea of a concept of unity, of uniting something. In this case, God and man. We're becoming one, echad, united. So in this case, that should refer our minds back to the Shema in the book of Deuteronomy. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, might, mind, and strength, kind of thing. Well, that is the idea behind it, that this is something that is meant to bring us into a state of unity with God. Now, which is interesting, the letter Vav also, in more of a symbolic meaning, gives us the idea of a cube, 6 directions in space. Each of the 3 dimensions in our physical universe imply 2 directions, making a total of 6. The 6 directions are north, south, east, west, up, and down. Now, this particular section here, you'll find in Aryeh Kaplan's book, The Sefer Yetzirah. And I find his works to be very, very foundational to much of the understanding of the Hebrew concept of the tree of life. But what's interesting about this is that if you think about the Book of Mormon, notice how some would go to the land northward, some would go to the land southward. There would be a sea east, a sea west, a sea north, a sea south. They would go up, they would go down. So the idea is that, that the record is giving us a window, a look into their world. And by looking into this window into the Nephite world, if you will, we're getting important lessons regarding what happened to them and in their time on this continent, as well as we begin to see a window to look at things which were more ancient than them, and prophetically, information and teachings which will prepare us for the world to come, what we would call the millennium. So in a sense, there's a like sequence of DNA. The Book of Mormon is interwoven with the knowledge of ancient Israel. A lot of this information, a lot of these teachings are so interwoven, and that they're read as we read over the text, we often miss the fact that they're standing right in front of us. One of the greatest ways to hide and compact information, which is very typical of ancient records, is to hide the information in plain sight. It's very similar to the idea of, Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow, or Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? Simple children's stories that we're taught to remember, yet there's an entire history and understanding behind those stories. Well, the same thing in many ways with the Book of Mormon. In this case, they're drawing upon actual historical events in the Nephite society. But the way in which they record it also contains more ancient information, things related to the creation, things related to teachings and teachers or prophets such as Enoch, Melchizedek, and others. It also contains other hidden language. And as you've gone through some of the series on this YouTube channel, you'll notice that we're looking at things that, sometimes are hidden in plain sight. And it should give us a greater depth of appreciation and understanding of this ancient record, which is the Book of Mormon. So again, until next time in this part of the series, next time we'll be going into additional alphanumeric sequences in the Book of Mormon, and to show you how intricately the text is put together, as well as some of the hidden meanings of some of these numbers in the text. So until then, have a good day.